The message arrived during what should have been an ordinary council session. No one in the chamber had any idea that within moments, the course of galactic history would change forever. Ambassador Reth sat quietly in his office, reviewing trade agreements and diplomatic reports, when a notification flashed across his communication console. His breath caught. The authentication code displayed on the screen was one he had not seen in over 300 years. An ancient code. A code from a forgotten era. A code that should not have existed anymore. His hands trembled as he opened the transmission. "This can't be real," he whispered. But it was. The humans were coming back. Reth was old now, one of the few Curie still alive who remembered Earth and its strange, determined people. Most of his species had long since forgotten them. To the younger generations, humanity was little more than a story from an old history archive. A distant memory. A legend. But Reth remembered. He remembered everything. 3 centuries earlier, his people had saved Earth from certain destruction. A colossal asteroid, large enough to shatter an entire world, had been racing toward the human home planet. Earth's technology at the time was hopelessly inadequate. The humans could do nothing but send desperate pleas into the darkness of space, praying that someone, anyone, might hear them before it was too late. The Curie heard. They were the closest civilization capable of helping. Without hesitation, their colony ship, Endless Dawn, abandoned its mission and altered course for Earth. 50,000 Curie lived aboard that vessel. 50,000 souls. 50,000 lives. They used powerful gravity well generators to pull the asteroid away from its deadly path. The plan worked. Earth was saved. But the cost was unimaginable. The strain tore the Endless Dawn apart. Every single Curie aboard perished. 50,000 heroes gave their lives so another species could live. Earth survived. The Curie did not. Humanity mourned. Across the planet, billions wept for people they had never met. They offered wealth, resources, technology, anything they possessed. Anything at all. But the Curie asked for something entirely different. They had studied humanity for decades. They admired human intelligence, creativity, and resilience. Yet they had also seen something deeply troubling. Humans were brilliant, but they were also violent, unpredictable. Their world was scarred by wars, conflict, and weapons capable of unimaginable destruction. The Curie feared what humanity might become if such a species reached the stars too soon. So they asked for time. 300 years. Humanity would remain within its own solar system. No expansion. No colonies. No contact with the wider galaxy. 3 centuries to grow. To mature. To learn peace. The request was painful. But humanity agreed. Most civilizations laughed when they heard it. They were certain humans would break the agreement within a few decades. Perhaps even a few years. But humanity surprised them. 1 century passed. Then another. Then a third. And still, humanity remained silent. No ships crossed the border of their solar system. No messages came from Earth. No expansion fleets appeared. The humans kept their word. Eventually, the galaxy forgot about them. Empires rose and fell. New alliances formed. Old rivalries faded. The universe moved on. Until today, the moment Reth received that impossible message. He rushed directly to the Galactic Council. The chamber fell silent as he played the transmission. Many of the representatives looked confused. Others looked annoyed. Director Fenn, a grey-skinned council leader with 6 unblinking eyes, listened with obvious irritation. When the message ended, he waved a dismissive hand. "This is irrelevant," he said. "The humans are probably extinct by now. It's likely nothing more than an automated signal." Reth slowly rose to his feet. His expression hardened. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "I knew them." The room grew still. "I spoke with their leaders after the Endless Dawn fell." His voice carried a weight that demanded attention. "And they made a promise." A representative scoffed. "Promises mean nothing after 300 years." Reth looked around the chamber. Then he spoke words that would soon terrify an entire galaxy. "To humans," he said, "promises mean everything." To humans, a promise means everything. Retha's words echoed through the council chamber. The debate raged for hours. Some argued that the mysterious transmission was a trick. Others feared that contacting humanity would bring disaster upon them all. Yet despite the doubts, curiosity slowly overcame fear. In the end, the Council agreed to send a probe to the edge of human space, if only to confirm whether the message was genuine. Reth volunteered immediately. Something deep within his heart told him this mattered. 3 days later, his vessel emerged near the border of Earth's solar system. What awaited him there made his blood run cold. A ship hung silently in the darkness. It was sleek, black, and unlike anything in the Galactic Council's records. It was not particularly large, perhaps carrying no more than 100 crew members, but every line of its design radiated purpose. Power, control, danger. It looked less like a spacecraft and more like a predator patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. A communication request arrived almost instantly. Reth accepted. A human woman appeared on his screen. She had dark skin, short hair, and eyes that seemed capable of seeing straight through him. Her uniform was simple and unadorned except for a single patch, a blue earth surrounded by a field of stars. "Ambassador Reth," she said calmly. "My name is Anne Brooks. I speak for humanity." Reth stared at her. "I did not expect you to honor the agreement." A faint smile touched Anne's lips. "We gave our word." The simplicity of her answer struck him harder than any speech could have. 300 years ago, she continued, your people saved every man, woman, and child on Earth. 50,000 Curie gave their lives for us. Her voice softened. We could never forget that. Every human child learns their names in school. We remember. Something tightened inside Retha's chest. The galaxy has changed, he said quietly. My people have changed. We are not what we once were. I know, Anne replied. We have been watching. We saw what happened to the Curie. We saw the fading. Reth closed his eyes. The fading. The genetic plague that was slowly erasing his species from existence. Every year fewer children were born. Every year more died before reaching adulthood. Scientists had already predicted the end. 2 generations. That was all they had left. There is nothing anyone can do, Reth said. We have accepted our fate. Anne's expression hardened. No. One word. Simple. Absolute. You saved us. Now we save you. The steel in her voice left no room for argument. The debt is owed, Ambassador Reth. The time has come. How may humanity serve the Curie people? Reth could only stare. You cannot be serious. You would risk yourselves for us. You owe us nothing. The isolation was payment enough. And slowly shook her head. Humanity doesn't think that way. 50,000 of your people died for us. We will not allow their sacrifice to be forgotten. We will not stand by and watch you die while we still have breath in our bodies and strength in our hands. This is who we are. Reth felt something he had not experienced in many years. Hope. Fragile. Dangerous. But hope nonetheless. The Council will never allow it, he warned. They fear you. Anne's smile returned. Then they are wise. Her answer caught him completely off guard. Because we are dangerous. For a brief moment, silence filled the channel. Then her voice softened. But never to our friends. Never. She leaned slightly forward. Will you take us to your homeworld, Ambassador? Will you let us help? Reth thought of his children. Both gone before reaching their 20th year. He thought of the grandchildren he would never meet. Of empty schools. Silent cities. A civilization slowly fading into memory. And for the first time in decades, another possibility appeared before him. Yes. His voice trembled. I will take you home. Anne nodded once. Then we begin. Send word to your matriarch. Tell her humanity has come to repay its debt. The transmission ended. Reth remained motionless in his chair. The stars outside seemed strangely brighter now. He had no idea whether humanity could truly save his people. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The galaxy had forgotten what humans became when they cared about something. When they formed a bond. When they chose something worth protecting. The galaxy was about to remember. And Reth suspected many would regret that reminder before this was over. News spread through the Galactic Council like wildfire. And fear spread even faster. Within hours of Ambassador Retha's transmission, Every major civilization in known space knew the impossible had happened. Humanity had emerged from isolation. Emergency sessions were called. Ancient archives were unlocked. Long-forgotten records were pulled from dusty databases. And for the first time, the younger species began to understand why the elder races looked so nervous. Director Fenn stood before the assembled council, his 6 eyes blinking rapidly, a clear sign of agitation among his kind. A massive holographic display glowed behind him. "I have reviewed the human files," he announced. "What I found is deeply concerning." The image shifted. Earth rotated slowly above the chamber floor. Red warning markers covered nearly every inch of the planet. Humanity originates from a Class 12 death world. A wave of whispers swept through the room. Fenn continued. "For reference, most intelligent species evolve on Class 3 or Class 4 worlds. Anything above Class 8 is generally considered uninhabitable." The murmurs grew louder. A Class 12 world was almost beyond comprehension. Earth wasn't merely dangerous. It was a nightmare. "The gravity is extreme," Fenn read from the report. "The atmosphere is corrosive by galactic standards. The weather is violent and unpredictable. Predators are abundant, aggressive, and extraordinarily resilient. Disease evolves rapidly." He paused, and the dominant intelligent species spent most of its history fighting itself. Silence followed. Finally, a representative from the Dreth Collective spoke. "Surely they have evolved beyond such violence." A bitter laugh echoed through the chamber. "Reth, you still do not understand." Every eye turned toward him. Humans did not become strong despite their world. They became strong because of it. His voice carried the weight of experience. Every challenge made them tougher. Every threat made them smarter. Every loss made them more determined. Fenn reluctantly nodded. The historical records support that assessment. The display changed again. Images flashed across the chamber. Human spacecraft, medical facilities, scientific breakthroughs, military reports. When humanity first entered interstellar space, they solved engineering problems that had baffled our scientists for generations. When the Trelling plague devastated border colonies, human medical students developed a cure in 3 weeks. The room erupted in disbelief. "Our experts worked on that plague for decades." A representative leaned forward. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Fenn's expression hardened. "I am suggesting that we do not want humanity involved in galactic affairs." The room fell silent. "They are too effective, too adaptable, too willing to do whatever is necessary." Another image appeared. A battle. Ancient footage from the border wars. During the conflict with the Trellan Armada, a single human vessel disabled an entire enemy fleet using tactics our military analysts classified as impossible. Retha's voice became quiet. "They rammed the enemy command ship at faster-than-light speed." Gasps spread throughout the chamber. The crew knew they would die. They did it anyway. Because it would save others. He looked around the room. "That is what humans do." No one spoke. No one could. Finally, someone asked the question everyone feared. "What do they want now?" Reth answered immediately. "They want to help the Curie." The reaction was explosive. Voices erupted from every corner of the chamber. Arguments, protests, disbelief. Fenn raised all 6 arms for silence. "The Curie situation is tragic," he declared, "but it is beyond saving. Hundreds of medical teams have studied the fading. It cannot be cured. The genetic damage is too extensive." Reth folded his arms. "Tell that to humanity." A few representatives exchanged nervous looks. "They do not believe in impossible." "Then they are fools," Fenn snapped. "Perhaps." Retha's voice remained calm. "But they are fools who keep their promises." The chamber fell silent again. 300 years ago, my people saved Earth. 50,000 Curie gave their lives. Now humanity believes it is their turn. Before anyone could respond, a new voice echoed through the council chamber. A voice nobody had authorized. A voice nobody could stop. The central display flickered, and Brooks appeared on every screen simultaneously. "Forgive the interruption," she said, though she sounded anything but sorry. Shock rippled through the room. This is a private council session. Fen protested and glanced around calmly. Your security systems are inadequate. She checked something off-screen. We breached them in approximately 7 minutes. A collective silence followed. However, and continued, that is not important right now. What matters is this. She leaned forward. We are going to the Curie homeworld. We are going to study the fading. And we are going to cure it. You cannot possibly. Fen never finished. We landed 12 people on our moon using computers less powerful than your personal communication devices. And cut him off. We split the atom before we had proper safety procedures. We sent robots across our solar system before we had reliable spacesuits. A faint smile appeared. Humans have been accomplishing impossible things ever since we discovered fire. This will be no different. The chamber erupted again. Representatives shouted over one another. Button simply continued speaking. We are not asking permission. We are not applying for council membership. We are informing you of our intentions as a courtesy. Her eyes hardened. The Curie saved humanity. We will save them. This is not negotiable. A security representative stood. You bring one ship. We have thousands. You cannot defy the council. For the first time, and smiled. And something about that smile chilled Reth to his core. We brought one diplomatic vessel. She paused. Would you like to know what else is waiting beyond your sensor range? The display suddenly changed. Deep space appeared. Dark, silent, empty, or so it seemed. Then shapes emerged. Ships, dozens, perhaps hundreds. Massive silhouettes lurking beyond detection range. The entire chamber froze. Anne's voice became almost gentle. 300 years is a long time. We did not spend it sitting idle. We built. We advanced. We prepared. Her gaze swept across the stunned representatives. Because history taught us a valuable lesson. Hope for peace. But prepare for war. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Voices clashed from every direction. Some delegates demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others argued for negotiation. A few simply hoped the humans would fail on their own. Amid the uproar, Reth slowly rose to his feet. The fading had already begun to take its toll. His aging body ached, and his heart beat unevenly inside his chest. Yet when he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber with surprising strength. You are all afraid, he said quietly. The room fell silent. Good. You should be. His gaze swept across the gathered representatives. Because I have met humans. I know what they become when they care about something, when they bond with someone, when they decide that person is worth protecting. Director Fen narrowed his eyes. What exactly you saying? Retha's expression softened. I am saying that 300 years ago, we saved them. He paused. And whether you like it or not, they now consider us theirs. A chill spread through the chamber. And humans protect what is theirs with a ferocity no other species can match. His voice grew stronger. They do not surrender. They do not accept defeat. They do not stop because the odds are impossible. He looked directly at Fen. If necessary, they would tear apart stars themselves to save those they love. A nervous murmur spread through the hall. That is insane, someone whispered. Yes, Reth replied with a faint smile. That is exactly what makes them so dangerous. His smile widened slightly. And exactly what makes them such valuable friends. Without another word, he turned toward the exit. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a message to send to my matriarch. He stopped at the doorway and glanced back. The humans are coming home with me. And she deserves to know. The massive doors closed behind him. Yet the arguments continued. The council debated. They analyzed. They worried. But deep down, Reth knew none of it mattered. Humanity had already made its decision. And when humans truly decided on something, the universe itself often seemed to bend around their determination. His only hope now was that his people could be saved before humanity reminded the galaxy why Deathworlders should never be underestimated. Or worse, why they should never be turned into enemies. Far away, the world of Quan waited. Once it had been the shining jewel of its sector, a paradise of soaring cities, thriving cultures, and billions of voices living in harmony. Now it felt like a beautiful graveyard waiting for its final occupants. Standing at the observation window of her ship, Ambassador and Brooks stared down at the planet below. Blue oceans sparkled beneath scattered clouds. Green continents stretched across the horizon. From space, it looked perfect. But and could already sense something was wrong. The city lights were too few. The orbital traffic was almost non-existent. Entire regions appeared dark, silent, abandoned. It was the unmistakable sight of a civilization slowly dying. Population. And asked softly. Behind her, Dr. Henry Okoye glanced at his data tablet. The tall geneticist from Lagos had spent his life fighting impossible diseases. Even so, what he saw on the screen made his expression grim. 193 million remaining, he said, down from 14 billion at their peak. The bridge fell silent, and closed her eyes for a moment. 14 billion. Reduced to less than 200 million. An entire species disappearing in slow motion. How long do they have? She asked. Henry swallowed. At current rates, approximately 40 years until the last Curie dies. He paused. Possibly less. Population collapse accelerates near the end. Commander Patricia Walsh folded her arms. The council sent another transmission. And didn't even turn around. What do they want? They are still demanding we abandon the mission. A cold smile touched Anne's lips. Then they wasted their time sending it. Patricia smirked. I thought you might say that. The ship entered the atmosphere. Unlike vessels from 3 centuries earlier, modern human craft moved with astonishing grace. There was no violent shaking, no deafening turbulence, only a gentle hum as advanced systems guided them toward the surface. Humanity had spent 300 years improving, and very soon, the galaxy would learn just how much. The diplomatic vessel descended toward the planetary capital and settled onto a landing platform overlooking the city. As the hatch opened, and took her first real look at Quan, elegant towers reached toward the sky. Magnificent architecture filled the horizon, yet beneath the beauty lay unbearable emptiness. Dark windows, empty streets, untended gardens slowly returning to nature. A civilization fading away, waiting for extinction. A small delegation stood at the landing platform. 5 Curie. Their 4 arms folded respectfully. Their skin shifted colors with emotion. At the moment, shades of gray and pale blue rippled across their bodies. Sadness, resignation, hopelessness. At their center stood an elderly female whose presence commanded immediate respect. Despite her age, she stood tall. And in her eyes lived centuries of sorrow. I am Matriarch Sailor, she said in flawless English. Welcome to Quan, Ambassador Brooks. She studied Anne carefully. Though I confess, I do not understand why you have come. And stepped forward. Then she did something that stunned both the Curie and her own crew. She lowered herself onto one knee and bowed her head. A shocked silence followed. 50,000 of your people died to save mine, and said clearly. We remember every one of them. Her voice trembled with emotion. Every child on Earth learns their names. We carved those names into a monument spanning 3 square kilometers. We have never forgotten. Her eyes lifted to meet the matriarchs. And we never will. For the first time, Sailor's colors shifted. Gray gave way to soft gold. A flicker of surprise. Perhaps even hope. Something the Curie had not felt in a very long time. Please, Sailor said gently. Stand. And rose slowly. The old matriarch studied her for a long moment. And somewhere deep inside her weary heart, a tiny spark of hope began to awaken. 3 days passed. For most people, it would have seemed like nothing. But inside the Curie research facilities, those 3 days felt like an eternity. Dr. Henry Okoye and his team barely slept. They worked around the clock, buried beneath mountains of genetic data, medical records, and biological scans. Every screen glowed with endless streams of information. Every hour brought new theories, new questions, and new dead ends. Yet they refused to stop. Because somewhere inside that data was the answer. Somewhere inside it was the reason an entire species was dying. And watched them from a distance. She saw the exhaustion in their eyes. She saw the frustration, the failures, the arguments. But she also saw something else. Determination. The uniquely human refusal to surrender. Again and again they pushed forward. And on the morning of the fourth day, everything changed. Henry found and standing near one of the observation windows overlooking the city. The expression on his face made her heart skip. Not because he looked defeated, because he looked stunned. "Anne," he said quietly, "we need to talk." Something in his voice sent a chill down her spine. "What did you find?" Henry hesitated, then answered, "I found something impossible." Minutes later, a small group gathered inside a secure conference room. Only 4 people were present. Anne, Commander Patricia Walsh, Matriarch Sella, and Dr. Henry Okoye. The room was silent. A massive display illuminated the darkness, showing endless strands of DNA twisting across the screen. Henry took a slow breath, then spoke. "The fading isn't natural." The words hit the room like an explosion. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Even the air seemed frozen. "What do you mean?" And asked. Her voice was calm. Dangerously calm. Henry zoomed in on several genetic markers. At first glance, it looks like random genetic degradation. He highlighted a series of patterns. But it isn't random. Another image appeared. Then another. And another. Each one revealing the same impossible truth. The damage follows a precise mathematical structure. Henry looked around the room. Someone designed this. Matriarch Sella stared at the display. Her skin lost all color. Pure white shock spread across her body. "No." The word escaped her as little more than a whisper. Henry nodded grimly. "I'm afraid so." He enlarged another section of DNA. Approximately 287 years ago, a biological agent was introduced into the Curie population. The room remained deathly silent. It embedded itself into your species' genetic code. It remained hidden. It spread slowly. And over generations, it began destroying reproductive viability. And felt anger rising inside her. Cold, controlled, dangerous. Henry continued. Whoever created this wanted it to look natural. They wanted future scientists to believe it was simply an unfortunate genetic collapse. Patricia's fists clenched. They wanted the Curie to die without anyone ever knowing they were murdered. Henry nodded. Exactly. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then and finally broke the silence. "Can you identify who did it?" Henry looked at her. "Yes." The room froze again. "I traced the biological signatures. The engineering methods. The molecular architecture." He tapped a control. The display changed. A new species appeared on screen. Tall, thin. Their crystalline skin reflected light like glass. Multiple sensory organs lined their elongated heads. Henry's expression hardened. "The Vos Concordat." The words landed like a hammer. They did this. Matriarch Sella collapsed into a nearby chair. Her 4 arms trembled violently. Tears gathered in her luminous eyes. "Why?" Her voice cracked. "What did we ever do to them?" Nobody had an answer, because genocide never truly needed a reason. Only hatred, fear, or ambition. And stared at the image of the Vos species. Her eyes became cold steel. "What matters now," she said quietly, "is not why they did it." The room fell silent. "What matters is that they hurt our friends." Every word carried growing fury. They tried to erase an entire civilization. They tried to murder billions. And they believed they would never face consequences. And turned back toward Henry. "Can you cure it?" No hesitation. No uncertainty. Henry answered immediately. "Yes." The room erupted with hope. "Now that I know what I'm looking for, I can reverse the damage. It won't happen overnight. But I can build a treatment. I can save them." For the first time in centuries, the Curie had hope. Real hope. And nodded once. "Good." Then she looked toward Patricia. "Contact Fleet Command." Patricia smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "What orders should I send?" Anne's eyes never left the image of the Vos Concordat. Her voice became terrifyingly calm. "We're going to pay the Vos a visit. A dangerous silence filled the room. We're going to have a conversation about what they did. And then. She paused. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. We're going to remind the galaxy of something it should never have forgotten. Matriarch Sela swallowed. What lesson is that? And finally looked at her. And for a moment, Sela saw something in those human eyes that was both frightening and comforting at the same time. A promise. A vow. A warning. Anan spoke. Slowly. Clearly. With absolute certainty. Never hurt our friends. Please stand. Matriarch Sela's voice was gentle, yet filled with centuries of sorrow. You owe us nothing. The debt was paid long ago through your 300 years of isolation. That was the agreement. And Brooks rose to her feet and met the matriarch's luminous eyes. With respect, matriarch, she said softly, humans do not think that way. A faint smile touched her lips. Your people saved us. Her voice grew stronger. Now we save you. For a moment, silence settled between them. Then Sela slowly shook her head. The fading cannot be cured. The words carried the weight of generations. Our greatest scientists have tried. The Council's medical teams have tried. Researchers from dozens of species have tried. Pain flickered across her features. All of them failed. We have accepted what is coming. Anne's expression hardened. We haven't. She turned toward Dr. Henry Okoye. The renowned geneticist stepped forward and offered a respectful bow. Matriarch Sela, he said, I will need unrestricted access to your medical facilities, research archives, genetic databases, and patient records. Everything. Sela studied him carefully. You shall have it. Then her voice softened. But I advise you not to hope too much, Doctor. A shadow crossed her eyes. This disease has broken the hearts of many brilliant people. Henry smiled. Fortunately, humans are stubborn. The matriarch blinked. Then, for the first time in years, a faint trace of amusement appeared in her shifting colors. Perhaps that will help. The matriarch personally guided the human delegation through Quan's capital, and walked silently beside her. Every street told the same tragic story. Empty homes, abandoned towers, gardens growing wild without caretakers, schools standing silent, parks without children. This was what extinction looked like when it came slowly enough to watch. Every building felt like a memorial. Every empty window felt like a grave. They eventually arrived at the Central Medical Complex. The structure was enormous. It had once been capable of treating millions. Now it housed only a few hundred patients. The Curie had stopped wasting resources on miracles. They no longer believed miracles existed. The moment they entered, Henry and his team disappeared into the research wings. Within minutes they were requesting files, samples, genome maps, and centuries of medical records. And watched them go. The mission had begun. Later that evening, Anne and Sela walked alone through one of the city's neglected gardens. The silence between them was comfortable. Eventually, the matriarch spoke. Why do you truly care? Anne looked at her. Because your people saved ours. No, Sela replied softly. That explains duty. It does not explain devotion. She stopped walking. Your world thrives. Your people are safe. We are strangers to you now. And stared at the fading sunlight beyond the garden walls. My grandmother told me a story when I was young. Sela waited. It was about the day the endless dawn died. The matriarch's eyes widened slightly, and continued. She told me the entire world was watching. Every screen. Every city. Every nation. She swallowed hard. Humanity watched 50,000 strangers sacrifice themselves to save us. Her voice trembled. My grandmother said people cried in the streets. Enemies embraced. Wars paused. Entire countries stood together. All because 50,000 people they had never met chose to die so humanity could live. And looked directly at Sela. That changed us. The matriarch remained silent. It showed us what we could become. It showed us what we should become. Anne's eyes glistened. We spent 300 years trying to be worthy of that sacrifice. We ended wars. We healed our planet. We built a society founded on one simple belief. She paused. That life matters. all life. And that some things are worth fighting for. A tear slipped down Selah's cheek. You gave us that lesson. And smiled sadly. You and those 50,000 heroes. The matriarch's colors shifted through emotions too complex to describe. Gratitude, grief, pride, hope. We have nothing left to give you, she whispered. We cannot repay this. And gently shook her head. We don't want payment. Her voice was warm. We just want you to live. 3 days passed. The human scientists barely slept. Henry and his team worked around the clock. They buried themselves in Curie genetics. Thousands of theories were tested. Millions of lines of data were analyzed. Failures came one after another. But humans had never been known for surrendering. And watched them push through exhaustion. She watched arguments become breakthroughs. She watched frustration become determination. And then, on the 4th day, Henry found her. Something was different. His expression was unreadable. Not excitement. Not fear. Something else. Anne, he said quietly, I found something. She immediately stood. What is it? Henry looked around to make sure nobody else was listening. Then he lowered his voice. You need to see this. The tone in his voice sent a chill down her spine. Whatever he had discovered, it was bigger than anyone expected. Far bigger. Anne, for the first time since arriving on Quan, and felt something colder than despair. She felt danger. Real danger. Because if Henry was right, the fading might not be a disease at all. It might be something far worse. Something deliberate. Something created. Something evil. And if that was true, someone was going to answer for it. The truth behind the fading. The secure conference room was silent. Only 4 people were present. Anne Brooks, Dr. Henry Okoye, Commander Patricia Walsh, and Matriarch Selah. The display before them glowed with streams of genetic data, complex DNA structures, and medical records gathered from centuries of Curie history. Henry stood at the center of the room. His expression was grim. Very grim. And immediately knew she was not going to like what she was about to hear. What did you find? She asked. Henry took a slow breath. The fading is not natural. The room froze. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Henry looked directly at Selah. Someone did this to your people. For a moment, the matriarch simply stared at him. Then all color drained from her skin. Pure white. Shock. Disbelief. Fear. Anne's eyes narrowed. Explain. Henry enlarged a section of the genetic code. The damage follows a precise pattern. His finger moved across the display. Natural mutations are chaotic, random, unpredictable. Another section appeared. This isn't. The room remained silent. Every damaged sequence follows the same mathematical structure. Henry swallowed. It was designed. Patricia's jaw tightened. How long ago? Approximately 287 years. The answer hit like a hammer. Selah sank slowly into a chair. No. Her voice barely emerged as a whisper. No. Henry continued. A biological agent was introduced into the Curie population. It integrated itself into your genetic code. It spread silently from generation to generation. And it was engineered to activate slowly. Anne's eyes hardened. Slow enough that nobody would suspect sabotage. Henry nodded. Exactly. He changed the display again. New data appeared. Whoever created it wanted extinction. Not war. Not conquest. Extinction. His voice grew colder. They wanted the Curie to disappear so slowly that everyone would assume it was bad luck. The room fell completely silent. The realization was horrifying. An entire species had been sentenced to death centuries ago. Not by nature. Not by fate. By someone. By a conscious decision. By murderers. Patricia swore quietly. Then she swore again in 2 more languages. And felt rage beginning to rise inside her chest. The kind of rage that arrived cold instead of hot. The dangerous kind. Can you identify who did it? Henry nodded. Yes. The room turned toward him. He pressed another command. A new image appeared. Tall crystalline beings. Slender bodies. Multiple sensory organs. skin that looked like living crystal, and did not recognize them. Henry did. The Vos Concordat. The room went still. They created the pathogen. They engineered it. They deployed it. And they hid their crime. Matriarch Sela looked as though the world had vanished beneath her feet. Why? Her voice broke. Why would they do this? Her forehands trembled. What did we ever do to them? Nobody answered, because there was no answer that mattered, and stared at the image of the Vos species. Her expression became unreadable, cold, controlled, dangerous. Finally she spoke. That doesn't matter. The room looked toward her. What matters is that they hurt our friends. The words were calm. Too calm. Patricia recognized that tone immediately. It was the voice humans used when they were truly angry. Not emotional. Not reckless. Focused. And looked back at Henry. Can you cure it? His answer came instantly. Yes. The room blinked. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Yes. Hope exploded inside Selah's eyes. Henry continued. Now that I understand how it works, I can reverse it. I can create a treatment. It will take time. But I can save them. For a moment, the matriarch looked as though she might cry. Nearly 3 centuries of despair cracked apart in a single sentence. Anne nodded once. Good. Then she turned toward Patricia. Contact Fleet Command. Patricia's eyes narrowed. New orders. And looked back at the image of the Vos Concordat. The room seemed colder. Very new orders. A slow smile crossed Patricia's face. It was not a pleasant smile. What would you like me to tell them? And folded her hands behind her back. Her voice became calm. Deadly calm. We're going to visit the Vos. Selah looked up sharply. Ambassador. And continued. We're going to have a conversation about what they did. Patricia grinned. The smile of a soldier who already knew where this was heading. And after that, Anne's eyes never left the display. The image of the Vos seemed frozen beneath her stare. After that, she paused. The room held its breath. We're going to remind the galaxy of something. What? Selah whispered, and finally looked at her. The matriarch saw something in those human eyes. Something terrifying. Something comforting. Something ancient. The protective fury of a species that never forgot its friends. Never, Anne said quietly, ever hurt the people humanity cares about. 3 weeks later, the galaxy watched in shock. At the edge of Vos territory, space itself seemed to ripple. Then the human fleet arrived. Not with speeches. Not with warnings. With purpose. 47 warships emerged from hyperspace like shadows becoming real. Dark. Silent. Immovable. At their center stood the flagship. The Endless Dawn. Named in honor of the Curie vessel that had sacrificed itself to save Earth 3 centuries earlier. A reminder. A promise. A debt remembered. Admiral Derek Stone stood on the command deck. A veteran of humanity's modern defense forces. Gray-haired. Scarred. Unshakable. Around him, officers worked with calm precision. Status report. All ships accounted for, Admiral. 47 present and combat ready. Position. 1 light minute from the Vos border. Derek nodded. Good. He looked toward the stars. Open a channel. The communications officer obeyed immediately, broadcasting on all frequencies. Derek stepped forward. His voice carried across the void. Across planets. Across stations. Across an entire civilization. This is Admiral Derek Stone of the Earth Defense Fleet. Every Vos citizen heard the message. Every government official. Every military commander. Every conspirator. 287 years ago, Derek continued, you introduced a biological weapon into the Curie population. His voice never changed. Never rose. Never trembled. You murdered billions. Slowly. Deliberately. And you believed nobody would ever discover your crime. A pause followed. The silence felt heavier than any threat. You were wrong. Across Vos space, fear began to spread. Because the humans knew. And humanity had come to collect the debt. The galaxy held its breath. And war stood waiting at the door. When humanity goes to war. On the Vos homeworld, panic spread through the leadership council. That alone was remarkable. The Vos were famous throughout the galaxy for their cold logic and emotional restraint. They rarely panicked. They rarely reacted. But now, fear was winning. Supreme Coordinator Vesh stood at the head of the council chamber, his crystalline body reflecting the harsh white lights above. "How many human ships?" he demanded. A military advisor checked the incoming reports. 47 confirmed vessels. The chamber erupted into nervous whispers. Vesh frowned. 47. His voice sharpened. "We possess over 600 warships. Why is everyone acting as if we have already lost?" An elderly council member slowly rose from his seat. Unlike the others, he had access to the oldest intelligence archives. The forgotten records. The dangerous records. "Because they are humans," he answered quietly. The room fell silent. The old counselor activated the central display. Ancient military files appeared. Battle reports. Casualty statistics. Historical records buried for centuries. Everything in our archive says the same thing. His voice became grim. "We do not want a war with humanity." Vesh scoffed. "That is superstition." The elder shook his head. "No." The display changed. Images of human warships filled the chamber. "That is experience." "Explain." The elder enlarged the images. "Human vessels are built differently than ours." Several schematics appeared. Redundant systems. Compartmentalized structures. Armor far heavier than galactic standards. Vesh frowned. "That makes them slower." "Yes." The elder nodded. "Humans don't care." The room blinked. They don't build ships to win beauty contests. They build ships to survive. The image zoomed in on a scarred human cruiser. A vessel that looked as though it had survived a dozen wars. Human strategy is simple. The elder's voice grew darker. "They stay alive long enough to hurt you." Silence followed. The display changed again. Weapon systems appeared. Missile batteries. Rail cannons. Nuclear launch systems. Radiation emitters. Kinetic accelerators. Weapons that most species considered barbaric. Several council members looked horrified. "These can't be real." "They are." The elder nodded. "Humans use kinetic weapons alongside energy weapons. They throw missiles. They throw bullets. They throw metal rods traveling at impossible speeds. They weaponize radiation. They weaponize gravity. They weaponize anything that works." The room remained silent. Vesh felt uncertainty creeping into his thoughts. What tactics do they use? The elder looked directly at him. "Any tactic that wins." The answer chilled the chamber. "That isn't an answer. It is the only answer." The elder pointed toward another battle record. "They ram enemy ships." Several council members stared. "What?" "They intentionally collide with enemy vessels." The room exploded into shocked murmurs. "That is insanity." "No." The elder shook his head. "That is humanity. They will sacrifice a ship if it saves 10. They will sacrifice 10 if it saves 1,000. They will do whatever is necessary." The display shifted again. Images of human soldiers appeared. Human pilots withstand gravitational forces that would kill us. They fight in environments that would destroy most species. They continue fighting after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate anyone else. He paused, then delivered the most important warning. And most importantly, the room waited. They do not quit. Silence consumed the chamber. Nobody laughed. Nobody argued. Because every record supported the same terrifying conclusion. Humans did not stop. Ever. "What are our options?" someone finally asked. The military advisor hesitated. "We could fight." The elder immediately turned toward him. "At what cost?" Nobody answered. The question spoke for itself. Vesh slowly looked around the room. For the first time, doubt appeared in his crystalline eyes. The truth was simple. The Vos had committed what they believed was the perfect crime. They had targeted the Curie because they were peaceful, because they were prosperous, because they might someday become rivals. So they designed a weapon. A slow genocide disguised as fate. A species erased without war. Without evidence. Without consequences. It had been flawless. Until now. Until humanity learned the truth. And now the Deathworlders were here. Demanding justice. Vesh straightened. Send a response. Several council members exchanged nervous glances. What response? Vesh's voice hardened. We deny everything. The elder closed his eyes. Coordinator. We deny everything. The order echoed through the chamber. We know nothing about any biological weapon. The accusations are false. The evidence is fabricated. His fists tightened. And tell the humans to leave our territory immediately. The elder looked away. He already knew what would happen. Humanity had come too far to turn back. The message was sent. The humans received it. And then they waited. 12 hours passed. The human fleet remained motionless. Silent. Dark. Patient. No warnings. No negotiations. No threats. Only silence. A silence that became more frightening with every passing minute. Then the deadline expired. And humanity attacked. 600 Vose warships stood ready around their homeworld. They possessed superior numbers. Superior positions. Superior logistics. Every military model predicted victory. The humans should have lost. Instead, they charged. The 47 human vessels accelerated directly toward the defensive line. No hesitation. No elaborate maneuvers. No caution. They came forward like predators that had finally found their prey. The Vose fleet opened fire. Thousands of energy beams crossed the void. Weapons designed for civilized warfare. Weapons intended to disable rather than destroy. The attack struck human shields. Then human armor. And accomplished almost nothing. The human ships never slowed. Never altered course. Never broke formation. They simply kept coming. Closer. 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 And then humanity fired back. The galaxy learned what uncivilized warfare truly looked like. And the nightmare had only just begun. The wrath of a death world. The moment humanity returned fire, the battle changed forever. The Vose fleet had prepared for a conventional engagement. They expected precision. They expected caution. They expected the carefully regulated warfare practiced throughout the Galactic Council. What they received instead was humanity. And humanity fought very differently. Missiles erupted from human launch bays in endless waves. Hundreds. Then thousands. The void itself seemed to ignite as swarms of guided warheads raced toward the Vose formations. Point defense systems opened fire immediately. Lasers slashed through space. Explosions lit the darkness. Dozens of missiles were destroyed. Then hundreds more took their place. The swarm never stopped. It simply kept coming. Like a tidal wave. Like an avalanche. Like an angry force of nature. At the same time, the human rail cannons began firing. Simple weapons. Primitive by galactic standards. At least that was what everyone had believed. Until they saw the results. Solid metal projectiles accelerated to impossible speeds tore across the battlefield. The kinetic rounds struck Vose shields. And passed straight through them. The shields had been designed to stop energy. Not chunks of metal traveling at fractions of light speed. The first impacts punched completely through armored cruisers. Ships exploded from the inside. Entire sections vanished in flashes of fire and decompression. One Vose commander watched in horror as a projectile entered the bow of his flagship and exited through the stern. Everything between those 2 points ceased to exist. His vessel broke apart seconds later. Then came the radiation weapons. Weapons so feared that most civilizations had outlawed them centuries ago. Weapons humanity had never agreed to ban. Invisible waves flooded the battlefield. Sensors screamed warnings. Crew members collapsed at their stations. Electronic systems failed. Shield generators overloaded. Entire ships became floating coffins. The Vose had no defense. No countermeasure. No answer. Within the first hour, 80 Vose warships were destroyed. Human losses totaled 2. The numbers seemed impossible. Yet the wreckage-filling space proved otherwise. Fall back. Supreme Coordinator Vesh shouted from the command center. Regroup at the secondary defensive line. The order was transmitted across the fleet. But the humans gave them no time. No breathing room. No opportunity to recover. The Earth Defense Fleet pressed forward relentlessly. Every retreating ship became a target. Every opening was exploited. Every mistake was punished. Human commanders attacked with brutal efficiency, not because they enjoyed destruction, but because they intended to end the fight as quickly as possible. And once humans committed themselves to a task, they rarely stopped until it was finished. The Vos attempted counterattacks. Again and again. Each one failed. Human pilots flew like beings possessed. They performed maneuvers that should have torn their bodies apart. Their ships spun through impossible vectors, dove through crossfire, slipped through gaps too small to exist. Every weakness in the Vos formation became an opening. Every opening became a disaster. The battlefield turned into chaos. And humans thrived in chaos. One desperate Vos captain made a decision. If humans relied on ramming tactics, then perhaps the same tactic could be used against them. He pushed his cruiser forward. Maximum acceleration. Collision course. The human vessel ahead appeared trapped. The bridge crew celebrated. For a moment. At the last possible second, the human ship fired maneuvering thrusters. The vessel slid sideways with impossible precision. The Vos cruiser missed entirely. Before the captain could react, several kinetic rounds slammed into his engines. The massive ship immediately lost power. Momentum carried it helplessly forward. Dead in space. Defenseless. The human vessel simply continued past it, already focused on the next target. 6 hours after the battle began, the war was effectively over. The mighty Vos fleet no longer existed as a unified force. Ships fled in every direction. Some attempted emergency jumps. Others surrendered. Many simply drifted without power. The defensive line protecting the homeworld had collapsed. 600 warships. Gone. Broken. Scattered. Destroyed. Humanity had shattered one of the largest military forces in known space. And they had done it in less than a day. Aboard the flagship Endless Dawn, Admiral Derek Stone watched the battle unfold across tactical displays. His face remained expressionless. Status. The tactical officer glanced at her screen. Enemy resistance collapsing. Multiple vessels requesting surrender. Derek nodded. Accept surrender from any ship broadcast.